Our 12 Days of Christmas at Living Word Press culminates with the celebration of the birth of Jesus here on Christmas Day. Merry Christmas to you and your family. We are celebrating today what we are reminded of in Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. Unto us a son is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and of peace there will be no end, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it. We are celebrating today the birth of a king who would bring God's blessing and God's salvation, not just to Israel, but to all people. This celebration of Jesus as king today contrasts to the response of rejection that Jesus largely experienced while he was here on earth during his ministry. John 1 says that he came into his own, but his own received him not. He was welcomed and recognized as a king at the end of his life on Palm Sunday, but the crowds were calling for his crucifixion at the end of that same week. The religious leaders in Israel even cried out, "We have no king but Caesar." So in light of this reception and rejection that Jesus experienced, we have a passage from Isaiah chapter 1, verses 2 and 3 that I think becomes highly ironic. The prophet says there, "Hear me, you heavens, and listen, O earth, for the Lord has spoken. I reared children, and I brought them up, but they have rebelled against me. The ox knows its master, and the donkey its owner's manger, but Israel does not know, and my people do not understand." Do you see the irony there? The failure of the people to recognize their God is contrasted to how the donkey recognizes its master's manger and where he finds food. When Jesus, as God and Messiah, came to earth, he was placed as a baby in one of those mangers, a wooden or stone feeding trough. And the people did not know, they did not understand, they did not recognize them, or they did not recognize him as their king. We might even ask today, how are people now expected or supposed to recognize Jesus as a king? He doesn't look like any other king that we've known before. He doesn't come with the trappings of royalty. He had no earthly palace, no coronation, no government authority, no land that he ruled over, and no army that he led to victory in battle. He might have had the birth certificate that said Davidson family that made him royalty, but how do we see him as a king in any real sense of the term? In reality, it's the differences between Jesus and every other king we know that make him worth worshiping and celebrating today. He is a king that is worthy of our absolute devotion and worship, because Jesus is not just an earthly king or ruler. He is a heavenly king and a heavenly ruler with heavenly authority. The Bible reminds us that Jesus is a unique king because of his person and who he is. Romans 1:3 says that Jesus was not just a son of David, he was also demonstrated to be the Son of God by his resurrection from the dead. In the Old Testament, the Davidic kings were adopted sons of God. They were God's royal representatives, adopted to rule for him. But Jesus was more than an adopted son of God. Jesus is the eternal heavenly Son of God by his very person and nature. Jesus is also a unique king worthy of our worship today because of the scope of his authority. Jesus reminded his disciples before he went back to heaven that all authority in heaven and on earth had been given to him. In Psalm 110, one of the favorite psalms of the early church, the Lord promises the future Messiah, the future son of David, "Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool." And I think it's easy to understand why the early church found that one of their favorite psalms. Jesus doesn't have an earthly land or territory or domain because everything belongs to him. Jesus doesn't have an earthly palace because he is ruling and reigning today in heaven at the right hand of the Father. Every square inch of this universe belongs to him. And we can trust that everything in our lives and even in this broken world is ultimately under his control. Jesus is unique because of that. Jesus is also especially a unique king because of how he laid down his life for us. Jesus was born in Bethlehem so that he could wear a crown of thorns and bleed and die for his enemies so that they could be saved, forgiven, and restored to God. We're among those enemies that Jesus died for. No other king would make that kind of personal sacrifice. The cross isn't where the kingship of Jesus failed. The cross is actually where and how Jesus is exalted as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And finally, Jesus is unique because of the way that he blesses those who live under his rule. As we think about giving and receiving Christmas presents today, think of the great gift that we have been given and being granted citizenship in the kingdom of God and in the kingship of Jesus. Colossians 1:13 and 14 says that God has delivered us out of the domain of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption and the forgiveness of sins. No other king could save us, redeem us, and forgive us like Jesus. And we enjoy the blessings and benefits of living under his rule now and forever. Have a blessed Christmas day as you worship the King of Kings and celebrate all that he has done for us and the great gift that he has given to us.